Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Sitaram. Welcome to Cooking with Madho. Today I show you World Steelpan Day from Woodford Square, Port of Spain, Trinidad. This day has been declared by the United Nations in recognition for the indigenous innovation of the steelpan movement that struggled during the colonial period to enjoy the right of freedom of expression and the right of association. So to get to Woodford Square though, I need to take my bus out of San Fernando. So I get into the PTSE bus, which is a government subsidized bus, kind of like, the MTA in New York, or think about this like JUTC in Jamaica. And I pass Chaguanas, I'm on my way into Champlain, and UWI's Mount Hope Hospital is on the right. UWI's Arthur Lockjack is on the left. Eventually we'll pass SBCS as we hit Champlain, and we pass the Carib Factory, and we get on to Eastern Main Road before I eventually get to the proper area of the priority bus route, which, as the name suggests, is exclusively a road for public transport vehicles, i.e. buses alone. And we pass the famous Quezé or San Juan, we pass Aranjuez and Barataria, and we're pretty much heading into Port of Spain proper. But what is interesting is that all of these towns seem to have these central PTSE bus terminals that I think is crucial for a lot of the working class and low-income people to use, especially since we know elderly travel on the bus for free. So here it is that we're at Citygate, the transport hub of Port of Spain. And we see these massive platforms that are associated with different routes. And what happens is only 2 vehicles are allowed to alight per platform, and the passengers come down from the staircases seen. And when you get out of Citygate, you're into South Quay, which is pretty much a stone's throw away from right here. This is the Brian Lara Promenade that extends from the start of Wrightson Road almost until the East Dry River. So you could take a walk along the Brian Lara Promenade, pay your homage to the Prince of Port of Spain. But I have no intention today. I want to check out the pan scene. So I decide to walk up Frederick Street until I hit the cathedral. And here I am. I looked at the cathedral, I visited briefly, and then I took a detour back into Woodford Square, the University of Woodford Square, as declared by Dr. Eric Williams, the founding father of the People's National Movement, arguably the founding father of Trinidad and Tobago, the famous historian whose role in Steelpan movement was so integral that he did reconcile with warring factions of Steelpan gangs and convince them to put down the violence, to stop the violence, and try to assist them in getting youth-based empowerment like jobs that some arguably state might be the origins of some degree of welfare in Trinidad, social welfare on the form of political patronage. I'm not entirely convinced. And all I will say is that Eric Williams was, through his intervention and his passion for the steelpan, able to try to entice private sector businesses to start promoting steel bands. And he was very instrumental in that. Opposite the Queen's Park Oval, I check out Woodbrook Yard. I get myself an aloo pie from Hassan Ali's, but you could also get Korean, Mexican, Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai food there. I visit Trinidad, check out the books by Kim Johnson on steel pan, and then I visit a booth that is all about pan making, because we now, since 2020, make our own steel pan instruments in Trinidad through the music makers. And then I met an educator who was brilliant, Leeanna Williams. So I'm here with this young lady, and she'll tell me about the literature with Steelpan, Magic Steelpan.
The Magic Steelpan. Well, this is my book, The Magic Steelpan. Our Grandpa Kong's got his name, and what it is it's a book about all the magic and the mystery of the steel pan. Because what we have found is that children especially love the steel pan. And we want to teach children from all over the world the story of the steel pan in a fun and enjoyable way.
So, go on. So
and this book is about, well, three main characters really. A little boy who's called Nathan, his sister, Natasha, and how they discover the magic in their grandfather's name, Counts. And yes, so his name is Counts, it's short for Conqueror. And the book tells you how he became Conqueror, the magic of that event. Right? Because he has this magical instrument that really has wonderful magical qualities. And it's a whole story about what happened for him to become called that name and for him to get his steel pan sobriquet. Right? In the steel pan movement, people who are really great players have their sobriquet. You'll never really call somebody by their real name, but you call them by a name that is bestowed upon them because of some sort of great thing that they have done. Right?
So it's similar to Calypsonians with sobriquets or dancehall artists.
Exactly.
So in the same way you're trying to promote the legendary status of these local band players, promote identity, and encourage children to read in a unique way.
Exactly.
So is this your first book?
Yes, this is the first of a series of 7.
7.
So yes.
What is the age level you would recommend this book? Because I'm going to take it with me to Jamaica.
So from 8 to 12.
8 to 12.
Would be ideal.
Good.
Yes, so that kind of primary school children.
Okay,
so
thank you.
In the primary or elementary school.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great.
The symbolism of Laventil dance group sharing the celebrations is not lost on the crowd. Indeed, Laventil, John, Gonzales, Woodbrook, St. James have all played a part in the evolution of Steelpan. For Invaders, All Stars, Tokyo, Renegades hail from Port of Spain. It must be understood that in those early days, in the 1940s to the 1960s, there was a lot of pan gang warfare, rivalry, fierce, captured quintessentially by Earl Lovelace in the Dragon Can Dance novel, in which he said the different districts in Port of Spain operated like islands with garrison sovereignty, and the identity was reinforced by the steel bands, in which the steel pan players were like the foot soldiers, controlling the turf, protecting their turf. It is said that in 1954 there was an infamous pan clash, and it's captured in Lord Blakey's Calypso. But Sparrow was more sympathetic when he reflected on the outcast and claimed that many pan men were brutalized and victimized and criminalized by the police. So we now understand that the steel pan movement went through a lot of discrimination as well, until it became gentrified and introduced into the upper echelons of society, while integrating with the church, integrating with schools, and integrating in a more peaceful setting with wider communities. The gentrification and education luster attached to Steelpan is best reflected in the National Symphony Orchestra. Performing globally, they perform in front of the crowd, playing the soca tune Engine Room. The Moko Jumbies are the carnival characters on stilts walking. They're celebrating Skiffle Bunch, the bunch from Coffee Street, San Fernando, that mentors the Naparima College and the Naparima Girls High School's competition winners for Panorama 2023 NAPS combined. Skiffle Bunch has packed a huge punch from South and has brought rival bands to Port of Spain to contest Panorama annually. Led by Junior Regrello, the son is pioneering in front. He leads the band and he leads the troops to entertain today when they perform Tobago Girl and Carnival Queen by Destra. I want to say that I like this band because there's a lot of diversity, a lot of races, socioeconomic classes and sexes. You see a lot of women, not just on the bass, not just women on the bass, but women playing tenor pans up in front. So there's a lot to appreciate in Skiffle Bunch because what they're really teaching us here is the embracing of diversity and multicultural evolution of Trinidad. Instrument has evolved from previous percussion instruments that were used to celebrate Trinidad's carnival during the colonial era. Prior to the steelpan's introduction to the streets of Port of Spain, garbage lids, metal objects, and tambu bamboo resonated as an improvised concession to a colonial law that banned the playing of West African drums in 1877. The Cambule riots of 1881 witnessed an attempt by the ex-enslaved to voice their frustration. However, its control meant that the revelers took back the streets of Port of Spain, but using other percussion instruments until they found their home of music in the steel pan. Perhaps by the 1930s, that experimentation eventually blossomed. It is said by the 50s, a standardized pan instrument was found and an ample supply of rusty old oil drums, 55-gallon style, was provided by the American Naval Base. And the persistence of Winston Spree Simon in conceptualizing 8 pitches came to fruition. The brilliance of Elie Manette in designing the sticks for the pan created a more perfect tone and pitch. And Anthony Williams and Bertie Marshall stuck to the task of designing the tenor pan to the point of perfection, so that by 1977, when Huey Carreri decided to try to implement a design and manufacture of steel pan, Trinidad was on its way. However, that plan thwarted, but by 2020, there is new hope on the horizon, and the pan reverberates once again with this concept of the pan factory. I now leave you in the capable hands of the National Symphony Orchestra. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Ciao gayo. Adavars Firmilege. Kodafis. Bye bye.